Hey everyone, I'm RVRocks, and over the years I've had a remarkably rocky relationship with anime. When I was younger, it was my bread and butter, the only form of animation I would watch, and as I've stated a few times on this channel, that hobby quickly began to fade as I reached maturity. But when I was at last at my anime lowest, one anime came to catch my attention: JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. This anime has been memed to hell and back, and well, it invites it. The fanbase can be annoying, but by all accounts, the show is worth its namesake. The show is fucking weird. It can race from rapidly different tones in moments, sometimes to the show's detriment, but it is such an amazingly watchable experience, being simultaneously stupid and brilliant with a bizarre amount of poop jokes to boot. But if you made it to this video, you probably know this by now, and that's not what this video is about. If there's one thing I like more than whatever fandom is my flavor of the month, it's video games. What's better than watching your favorite show? Well, playing your favorite show. Here's the thing though. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has existed for almost 40 years now, and it still doesn't have any good video games. So what is it about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure that hinders it so greatly from having these amazing video games when other anime adaptations have them in spades? Naruto has the Storm games, Dragon Ball has Fighters, Budokai, Kakarot, and Xenoverse. And even My Hero has One's Justice too, which has found itself a surprisingly bolstering audience for a genre that has traditionally not been taken seriously. So, what is stopping JoJo from reaching this goal? Well, I think part of the problem is that JoJo is not really a battle anime at its core, at least not anymore. You can argue that while Phantom Blood and Stardust Crusaders to a degree definitely focus more on the action elements of the series, basically every other part tries to keep it balanced by making it more character-based. When watching a battle anime, there's always that feeling of, how is our main character gonna beat this new powerful enemy? Usually it always evolves into using his pre-established techniques in a new way, or finding some kind of way to overpower the enemy. JoJo takes that first one and runs with it. Fights are never really about the strength, it's about the weird ability the enemy has and how to counter it. Dragon Ball and Naruto, two priorly listed examples, and also a few of the anime I know most about, have their moments of this, but they focus much more on the getting stronger aspect. Our protagonists in JoJo usually don't care to be stronger than they already are. In fact, a large part of Jotaro's character is that he's gotten progressively weaker as the parts go on. Usually they are more than capable for most problems heading their way. JoJo isn't about the battle per se, it's about the mind games. A good example of this is the climax of Part 5, the Requiem Slowly Plays arc. This arc features mostly small, indirect confrontation between the main villain, Diavolo, and Giorno. After some body-swapping shenanigans, the goal of the arc is figuring out which one of them hides Diavolo, and after that, to get the arrow. The power of the characters in this scene doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if Giorno can canonically decimate Diavolo right now, because in this moment, all that matters is the arrow. The arrow is the power needed to defeat the other. The urgency isn't in the battle between the two. In fact, the final battle is a tad anticlimactic. The urgency is trying to get your hand on that object, get the leg up on the other. If this same battle was in Dragon Ball or Naruto, it would be 5 to 6 episodes of Giorno using every ability he has learned over the journey in new and interesting ways, and right when King Crimson has the upper hand, he figures out some way to unlock his stance potential and get the win right there. Not to knock either Dragon Ball or Naruto, but it's a different formula, and it works for the shows that it's in, but this comes to the question: how do you create the same feeling in a video game? How do you simulate the mental battle when the physical battle isn't of as much importance? So, the perfect JoJo game. What would it look like? Well, it would give you that ability to have that mental fortitude over your opponent. It would retain that wacky JoJo-ness that made the manga so famous in the first place. It would give you the ability to style on your opponent, much like the protagonists do in JoJo. And the last one, and arguably the most important one, it would find a way to blend all the different abilities of JoJo into a game where everyone fits and is part of the mold. And well, to be honest, there are only a few genres of games that could really fit this formula. I remember when I first got into the series, I thought a Dynasty Warriors type game was the perfect way to show off stand users. Those games are basically all about strategizing with spectacle anyways, but then I actually watched/read the series and found there's never really a moment where that gameplay style would naturally blend with the world of JoJo's. Like maybe part 1 and 2 and all the vampires could do it, but I originally envisioned this concept of stand users over the Hamon guys, so it's really a toss-up. I still think it would be cool to see. So now that we know how to build the perfect JoJo's game, let's look at the past ones and see where they succeed and where they fail. For instance, let's start out with Eyes of Heaven. probably the biggest budget JoJo's game on the market currently, and to start, it's story mode, also known as a JoJo Power Fantasy. It's basically a retelling of Stardust Crusaders, except instead of the Crusaders themselves, each of them is a main JoJo, and the stand user of the week they're fighting is each part's ancillary cast. It serves mostly as fan service, and the climax of the game, which I won't spoil here as frankly I think the story mode is worth playing, features that classic JoJo outsmarting over overpowering the enemy. It's not really conveyed through gameplay, merely a cutscene shows this action take place, and it's heavily foreshadowed, if you can call it that. The gameplay of Eyes of Heaven is like if a co-op beat-em-up had a versus mode. It's not really that deep, and I would struggle to call it a fighting game, but that doesn't really make it a bad time. It's mindless enough to be entertaining. Gameplay rarely requires actual skill, and for the most part, pick out your attack times okay, and the game will usually go in your favor. Granted, I have never actually played this game with another human being, and will probably never be able to, with a lack of couch co-op, and servers as good as dead, but from what I can tell, I'm not really missing much, and it's not really meant to be played for that anyways. The fan service, which is what most people come to these games for, is the best part of this game. Seeing all these classic attacks animated by a team that clearly knows the significance of these moments. It's nice, particularly for characters who don't have an animated part yet. Seeing them do their thing is pretty epic. I think this game falls into the same niche as the Naruto Ultimate Storm series, where no one's really playing this for its in-depth combat mechanics, more so just to see the cool moves happen. It definitely has the JoJo wackiness, the ability to style on your opponent. Hell, it even manages to give all the different wacky stands in JoJo a playstyle that meshes well enough with the rest of the game. But that level of thought that comes into play for most of the matches is just non-existent. I played through most of the story mode on autopilot, just kinda mashing attacks. It's a shame, because everything else here allows for a solid game, but the depth of combat is shallow at best. Now, I struggle to call this one a JoJo game in the same vein as the other ones on this list, but back on the Super Nintendo, JoJo's had a turn-based RPG, titled JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It, however, differentiated itself from the source material almost immediately, and if the old OVAs are anything to show, people really want their JoJo material to stick to canon, and this shit divulges fast and instantly. Tower of Grey is the janitor in the school, Death 13 is on the plane, stand users are all over the place, and more so, these are all boss fights, like an RPG where every enemy is a boss. Does that sound fun? The game plays like a slow, lame RPG, which I guess is common for most of the RPGs of that era. This does technically give the player the ability to control all the stands, as well as the mental gymnastics I talked about earlier, but it stumbles when it comes to giving the player the same JoJo wackiness and ability to style on opponents. I mean, this visual style is just gross. Man, it's JoJo, they could have done some cool stuff, but instead it's black bars and the occasional aura. I mean, fuck it, look at how much empty space is on the screen the entire time. Overall, this is not the game to get your JoJo's fix. Now for a game that I see the praises sung of a lot on the internet, and I struggle to see why, and a game that I barely heard of on the internet. PlayStation 2's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure and Phantom Blood. I looped these two together because while they were developed by two different teams, Bandai and Capcom respectively, it was clear that one was trying to emulate the other one. These two games are action beat-em-ups with a unique focus on using the different JoJo's power systems as the main combat mechanic. They both succeed and fail in their own ways, so let's start with the first released game, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The main thing dragging this game down is the structure of the whole thing. Every encounter, much like the SNES game, is its own boss fight, no mooks or nothing to beat down. And an issue that both games struggle with, and now that I think about it, the entire JoJo game lexicon as a whole struggles with, is the idea that they put too much effort into the wrong places. Both games feature many playable characters with different movesets, only to have most of the characters only appear once. Back to Golden Wind specifically though, this game has 8 playable characters, and each one plays somewhat differently. This would be awesome for recreating the manga, and then you think about how since the game is only boss fights, it only includes fights from the manga that can easily follow this format, so essentially skipping half the part. And furthermore, it includes characters like Wheelchair Polnareff, Abakio, Trish, and Fugo, who are basically only present for one fight each. Narancia too, if you count that his only real battle is Little Feet. I would have been okay foregoing any of these characters' playableness if what was playable was just a little bit tighter. I will say, bonus points to this game for including what is called a secret factor to those who complete objectives similar to the manga. It really gives the game that thinking mind game respect, if only a little bit. Knowing that if you do a certain action, the opponent will be done for. The thing is, Even with that, the game plays very poorly in motion. You can see it in the gameplay. It looks how it feels. Slow, boring, and most of the time unfun. It strikes me as something like those old licensed movie games that everyone had. They were cool when you were younger, but looking at this with the lens of what has been accomplished today really hurts this game. Phantom Blood, however, does not nearly fare as well. It's a game that I kinda love, even though I really hate it. It's a game too steadfast in its beliefs that it suffers as a game, but those beliefs are oddly endearing. For one, it adheres very strictly to the manga. It takes around a third of the game to finally get to Hamon Jonathan, which means that the first third of the game is spent playing with a half-baked moveset on a fully baked man. Furthermore, the game is just so weird. It really is married to having each character in Phantom Blood be playable, which is a weird goal. Like, the bullies are playable, 15 different versions of Jonathan are playable, 9 Dios, 2 Speedwagons, and fucking Straightso. Fun fact, I first found out about this game when reading up on Straightso on the JoJo wiki, because I forgot who he was when I started part 2, only to find out that he only had a playable appearance in one game, not counting the mobile gacha games. But anyways, this absurd amount of playable characters in a story where most people can only remember like 5 named characters in the first place is ridiculous. But their placement throughout the game is weird too. In story mode, you have to play a mission as Speedwagon, but the story decides to give you Speedwagon with a sledgehammer, the second variant of Speedwagon, which is a reskin of Jonathan with a spear. So rather than giving you Speedwagon with a unique moveset that was already in the game, it decides to give you a clone of another character that you've already played as in the story mode. This game is fucking wild, and that's not even touching how, unlike the Golden Wind game, this game actually feels like it's impossible to play properly. Like, Golden Wind feels and looks clunky most of the time, but this one just borders on unplayable. The controls are frustrating, awkward, and the graphics look like poo-poo. In fact, I'm willing to say that both of these games have graphics that look like poo-poo for PS2 games. Anyways, my third and final point on this game is that it wants you to lose. Phantom Blood is the story of a losing protagonist. Canonically, you are supposed to lose some of these fights, and if you win, the game is just like, well, sorry bud, you actually lost. Half of the challenge of the game is fighting the controls, which I guess that means you could say that there's a mental battle within it, but I feel like if you wanted to frame a beat-em-up game with a bajillion characters, something like Stardust Crusaders would have fit much more naturally than Phantom Blood, with more unique powers and a cast that actually wins most of their individual fights. But maybe that's a bad idea because the combat in Golden Wind is nothing special either. In conclusion, both games give you the wackiness of JoJo, and to an extent the mind games aspect, although in Phantom Blood's case that's likely unintentional. But both lack the ability to really style on your opponent, and frankly, fail to make these abilities mesh really well together. I think the potential is there, and if either of these games decided to pivot to Stardust Crusaders instead of the parts they were focused on, I think they would have been much more successful. Okay, so now it's time for my favorite 2 JoJo games, and I'll tell you guys a secret. I kinda lied to you. I knew what was... Sorry, I guess I have to take this. Hello? I didn't talk about Last Survivor? Or the mobile games? But Diamond Records is... Okay, fine. I'll talk about them and then we'll move on. So, in order to save the best for last, let's now talk about JoJo's Bizarre mobile games, because all of them are gacha games, which if you don't know, they're called that because they go, "Gotcha, give me your wallet." And frankly, they're all pretty lame. There's a matching game, a turn-based RPG, and Street Smash, which basically, they're as good as you'd expect from a gacha game based on each genre. Although, I will be fair and say Diamond Records used to be a lot more interesting. It used to be a 3D beat-em-up game with gacha mechanics, meaning you can run around and do attacks and such, but in an effort to balance the game, they transitioned to the RPG style, and that promptly killed the player base, leading to the game getting shut down. Here's a lesson to all you future and current game developers out there. Don't change the shit people like about your game. These games lack the ability to really do anything I stated earlier aside from maintain JoJo wackiness, but that's not really the focus of these games. They are perfectly fine with what they do, but I highly doubt anyone will be rushing to play these. These are the time waster type games, not the I have 3 hours to game kind of games. And now for the most what the fuck JoJo game I have seen. It is an arcade-only battle royale, and what looks to be a pretty okay one too. Since it's only available in Japan, from what I know, I can't pass any first-hand judgment, but it looks pretty alright. Keeping in mind that this is only in arcades, it's hard to judge as a full-fledged game, but it has multiple characters, most of which make a lot of sense for this type of game, and their abilities all look fleshed out. It's just odd. When I think of JoJo's, Battle Royale isn't exactly the genre that comes to mind, There are a few weird oddities, lots of character-specific actions that seem like they should be universal, Jotaro and Dio's time stop affecting the whole match, that kind of stuff, but it does everything right JoJo-wise. Like, there's only a few characters, but all their stands are done perfectly with their unique abilities, and the entire game is framed around gambling with Darby. It's super cool. My one big complaint is the visual style. It all takes place in an anime-colored Moreo, but the thing about that is the shading never quite looks like how it does in JoJo. More so those source filmmaker JoJo videos you see around on the internet. It gives you the ability to style on your enemies, mental battle, and strategy, and it fits all the stands under one combat style. But even with all that, I can't help but feel some of the JoJo wackiness and charm is missing. This one is subjective though, so I'll give it a half point. Okay, are we good? Can we cover the last 2 JoJo games? Okay, so now I'll tell you my secret. I knew these ones were the best, and I was saving them for last. When I said that JoJo's is about the mental battle over the physical one, I knew that that same mentality was echoed in fighting games. As in fighting games, it's never about which character is stronger, or at least it shouldn't be about which character is stronger. We all know that some games have absolutely fucked balancing. But usually it's all about each character's individual tools and how you use them against other characters' tools. Fighting games are much more like figuring out how your moveset can beat their moveset in order to come out on top, much like JoJo. And to start, the worst of the 2 JoJo fighting games, All-Star Battle. All-Star Battle wants to be a cool fan service game more than it wants to be a legitimate fighting game. And instead of creating a cool fighting game with JoJo flair, they made a cool JoJo game with a hint of fighting. The key to any good anime-based game is finding the correct balance between fan service, the novelty of being able to play as these characters, and actual good game design. However, most anime games kinda lean towards the wrong end of the spectrum if you ask me. The gameplay of All-Star Battle is fluid and feels pretty satisfying if you can play it right, but for those starting out, it feels so clunky. Move animations don't string super cleanly together, some characters have super limited attacks, I'm looking at you Rohan, and every stage has some kind of hazard you have to avoid, whether it be Joshu with a rock, Takira's dad, or even raining frogs. The thing is, when it comes time to play the game proper, these things feel more like a hassle than anything. While really cool to someone who's just starting out JoJolian or watching the Part 4 anime or in the middle of Stone Ocean, hazards like this limit your play more than anything. The actual game leaves a lot to be desired. I'm willing to say, for me personally, that's because I've spent a lot of time playing a game that is much more friendly to me. While this does have all the expected checks of a JoJo game landing at a perfect score, it is not the world's best fighting game, but it does do everything I laid out earlier. Now for the one that everyone knows about, Heritage for the Future. And well, what can I say that no one else has said? It's hands down the best JoJo game out there, and it was the second one made. If you don't know about Heritage, it is a Capcom-made fighting game during the golden age of Capcom, about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Stardust Crusaders. It has just about everything you want from both a fighting game and a JoJo game. A major gripe that I personally have with the game is that it's only focused on Part 3, but it mitigates this limitation in 2 very interesting ways. For one, they have just about everyone from Part 3, including Polnareff, Evil Polnareff, Kakyoin, Evil Kakyoin, Whole Horse and Boingo, and Chaka Khan. Fuck dude, this is a tale as old as time now, but they even phoned Araki to design a character who, canonically, hadn't been seen yet until that point, in the form of Midler. The other way they kinda get around this being limited on one part is that it gives characters moves from other parts. Joseph can use Hamon, and his super is based off the events of Part 2. Dio has his eye beams, and fuck dude, when I first played this and my friend used the Chariot Requiem super on me, I screamed. This is also ignoring that young Joseph is a secret bonus character. This falls right in the middle of that fan service, novelty, good game design triangle mentioned earlier. So much so that it even has a dedicated online community to this day. Perfect score, but I have to give it a +1 compared to All-Star Battle because, well, look at it. Even with a difference of 15 years between the release of these 2 games, it manages to blend everything much more uniformly, while also maintaining its strength as its own game. So if we know which one is considered the best JoJo game, and it seems like most of the internet unanimously agrees on that opinion, then why haven't we seen any more like it? Well, let's look at All-Star Battle. It's the first and only true successor to Heritage, and well, fighting games are hard. The truth is that, much like online first-person shooters, the single-player content and playing against bots isn't what a lot of people come to for these games. If the game isn't that deep competitively, people won't find enjoyment out of honing their skills, and the people who really like the game and spent time honing their skills won't find much enjoyment out of a game that doesn't have populated online. And the fact of the matter is, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a manga that resets its setting, cast of characters, and sometimes even genre across its parts. Trying to fit the main cast of each part into one game is absolute hell to work with. Look at Heritage. It fit just about any character you could think of in Part 3 into the game, but also has several identical models and similar moves across characters. All-Star Battle has characters from every part, but is still missing core characters like Weather Report, Foo Fighters, and Diego. And other core characters, Lisa, Old Joseph, Iggy, and Anisway, were DLC characters you had to pay for separately. Eyes of Heaven has way more characters, but also heavily reused content from All-Star Battle, as well as pivoted their content to be more serviceable to the lone player rather than something meant for more than one person. Which is unfortunate if you ask me. Eyes of Heaven came out long before Part 4's anime did, and from what I can tell, Part 4 was when the big boom of JoJo fans happened in the West. So the sad truth is, if they did try to go back to that fighting game model that they had in All-Star Battle, it would probably succeed greatly nowadays. Actual good anime games are the thing to do, so I guarantee you if JoJo had one, it would blow up. But at this point, I really don't think we're going to be getting a JoJo game for a very long time. But you know what? I am so hoping to be proven wrong. I'm also hoping to be proven wrong on no one watching this video. So, that was my long dissecting argument on the history of JoJo games. If you liked what you saw here today, please hit me with that like and send it to any of your friends who may be interested. If you want to see more of what I do, then feel free to subscribe. Here in RV Rocks, I mostly focus on Smash, game design stuff that makes me angry. Long story short, anything I could talk about for long periods of time is something I'll probably make a video about because, well, I'm a very opinionated person, to say the least. If you do end up subscribing, then I will see you next week with another video. And if you disagree with anything I said, please let me know in the comments. I always respond down there, and you don't see too many YouTubers doing that. That's a luxury you're only gonna get down here, baby. So anyways, I've been RV Rocks, and thank you so much for watching. See ya!